Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Better Sex Podcast. This is Jessa. So glad you're here with me today. And I've got a sort of a fun conversation, actually. I mean, it's sort of heavy stuff, but it was a fun conversation. I'm talking to Alex Liu, who made a documentary film called Sexplanation.com, if you want to go to the website. Anyway, it started out of his own journey as coming out as gay in high school, where he was lovingly supported, but still felt a lot of shame and confusion. And then, he just shares it by 20s and 30s. He's still having shame and confusion about some things. And the messages that society gives are all risk-based and negative. And so he started this journey of research and creating this film where, he talked to all kinds of different experts in all kinds of different fields and different settings. And, went to the church and went to educators and all this stuff and put this together that really shakes up the way that really all of us think about sex. Like, so much he was talking about is relevant to almost every couple I see in sex therapy. So even though his experiences are rooted in his own life as a gay man, they're really human questions and human fears and human shame. It's basically a universal message around how to loosen this up and be pleasure-based and open and increase communication. And anyway, I can't wait to see the movie, and I think you're going to want to watch it too after you hear this conversation with him. I hope you enjoy it. And before we start the show today, it is sponsored by Intimacy with Ease. It's a method to help otherwise happy couples achieve a sex life that is easy and fun for both of them, so you can actually just enjoy your sex life with zero stress. For more information, if you want to watch a brief little training video that's available, all of that, go to intimacywithease.com. So Alex, thank you for reaching out and wanting to be on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think I want to start just sort of with, where did this film come from? Like, how does this tie to your own story? Set this up for me.
Yeah, so I think I came out of the closet as gay my senior year of high school, which was about almost 20 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. And that time of my life was the worst time of my life. Probably I was suicidal, depressed, anxious. It was a tough challenge to get through. And I think mainly because even though my parents were incredibly supportive and loving and warm, gay sex between men at that time was framed completely around risk. It was framed around you're going to get HIV/AIDS and die. It was framed around you are going to be open to violence from society at large. And to be frank, at that time, I fell in love with a boy and I told him my feelings and he said he would rather die alone than be in a relationship with a man, right? So already sex at that age of my life, when the hormones are raging, sex became this thing that was just so coated and caked in shame, right?
Yeah, I am sitting here thinking, high school is already hard enough for all of us. And this whole thing around sex is hard enough for all of us. And then you add on all that messaging, very specific to sex between men.
Yeah, it was. And my parents, they were so supportive. All they cared about was my well-being. There was no issue with the family or society knowing I was gay, but they just didn't have the tools to know how to deal with it, right? They didn't have that training. It was so new to them. Luckily, they put me right into therapy right away. And also, luckily, they did the work to meet local gay people, really find people who could be models for me so that I could see that a life of meaning and happiness was possible. And so by the time I was in my mid-20s, the whole family was marching in gay pride parades. It was like a very joyous event. I was fully out. I felt like my sexuality was more or less integrated into my life. But still, when I was actually having sex, it didn't feel like I thought it would, right? I still had issues with my body. I still didn't feel connected to my body, disconnected from the other person. I didn't know how to communicate my wants, needs, desires. I was okay to be openly gay, but I was still having shame around, anal sex. I felt shame around how to talk about, maybe taboo fantasies, all these things. And as I got into my 30s, I was realizing that these feelings were not going away, that I couldn't keep them in. So I started to slowly talk to some friends about this, and not just gay friends, of friends throughout my life. And they started to say, I have the same concerns. I have the same fears. I never talk about sex what sex means for my life and how to incorporate it into a healthy lifestyle. And so I started to think, okay, well, I'm not alone. I have a background as a science reporter. My instinct was to dive right into the science.
Right.
And, and immediately my shame started getting released, right? You realize that although sex research, I'm sure that you wish there would be more money put into sex research so we could understand sex on a much more deeper level. But immediately you start realizing, oh, wow, tons of people have these taboo fantasies. Tons of people enjoy anal sex. Tons of people enjoy all sorts of things. And if anything, I'm quite, I guess I was just searching for that idea of normalcy, although I kind of question if that's even a useful framing whatsoever when it comes to sex. But that's what you're kind of searching for when at that point in your life, when when no one talks about it. And then I started thinking, well, why don't we tell 14-year-old kids that anal sex is normal? Why don't we tell 14-year-old kids that masturbating once a day is normal? All these things that if I had been told at a younger age, I feel like I would have at least had less shame, and I could have seen sex as a joyous, pleasurable way to live, and something that wasn't just framed around risk,
So is that part of what when you say your parents were sort of, they had the intention, the goodwill, but they didn't have the tools?
They didn't, right?
Is that part of what you're saying? You didn't have those conversations about sex or about masturbation?
Exactly. So we start the film interviewing my parents, asking them, I think I maybe started the movie in more blamey space, but very quickly you realize that there's no blame really.
Yeah.
Their parents didn't talk to them, and considering that they were doing great, that they're willing to do the work to be more open about it. But yeah, I talked to them about what was going on in their lives when I was going through puberty, that they didn't feel comfortable talking about it. And soon you kind of realize that the reason why this isn't taught in schools is because at least in America, no school board member is going to campaign on the platform of normalize anal sex for teenagers. It's just too difficult of a campaign platform, right? No one, it's like that. Kids need to learn that it's okay to masturbate, or girls need to learn that their clitoris is a source of pleasure. Like that.
If I were going to run for the school board, that would be my platform.
Yeah, maybe more and more now. I bet that in some parts of the world, of the country, that could be a platform people could stand on. But I realize it's just too difficult to get done in schools in the right way.
It is.
And I started to think, okay, well, I have this background. I'm doing the research. Why not try to see if I can put together a documentary, a narrative, interviewing as many experts in the US and Canada as possible to ask them my darkest, deepest secrets and fears around sex, and seeing what they say and seeing how they're framing things. And throughout this whole process, I realized just how much of my conception of sex and sexuality is framed totally incorrectly. It's framed in this kind of pleasure negative and risk-based, public health-based framing. And that's just, sex is just so much more. And we need to talk about it.
So did your questions evolve as you went? I mean, how long did it take you to...
So the first frame was shot in 2014. The majority of the film is 2017, 2019. But yes, I started the film thinking, I'm just going to talk about the science of orgasms, and I'm just going to talk about how much porn we watch, right? But then you start to realize as you talk to more people, just how narrow our idea of what sex and sexuality is, what it means to be a sexual being, that it's impossible to compartmentalize that aspect of yourself to only the bedroom. Let's say that we really, and I'm still dealing with a lot of this shame that I every day something comes up when I realize that I'm instinctually kind of repressing or trying to modulate an experience, when it could be something as simple as feeling the breeze through my body, or whatever it is, just a pleasurable sensation or a pleasurable thought. I'm immediately, my reaction is to try to modulate that, and realizing that that it's a lot of effort and energy and doesn't really serve me in a way that I think is healthy.
Yeah. So I'm imagining your questions evolved too from fact, science, risk to wait a minute, what's possible? Or where are we even getting these crazy ideas that limit us
Yeah.
so much?
In a weird way, weird to me, it's probably not weird to you, but I find sex so much more sacred now, if that makes sense. I
Hmm.
think because the initial ways I heard about gay sex was framed through religious fundamentalist teachings about it being a sin, about you're going to hell, about, my family was raised Catholic, so it was very much a negative
Yeah.
introduction to gay sex, that my kind of reaction in my youth was to kind of overcorrect, and to immediately up to, if I met a guy and we hit it off, it was immediately having sex. And it was kind of meaningless sex as kind of a middle finger to the Catholic Church, and not thinking about, what do I actually want in this amazing, intimate, vulnerable connection with a human being, that the most euphoric kind of spiritual moment you can have another person. I hadn't really thought through what that meant for me and how I wanted to actually express that. And it was actually kind of interesting. I'm interested to see what you and other people think, but it was me going to actually some Jesuit priests who are kind of trying to think this through, because they realize they're losing a lot of their flock because of their messages around sex.
Yeah.
And the spiritual component is something I'm still working through, because it's been a while. It's kind of new for me to think about sex and those kind of
Yeah.
things.
I want to ask you more specifically about what you learned in your ahas and things like that. But I'm also wondering, how much is the movie? I mean, does it even matter? Is it about gay sex and your journey as a gay man versus this is human? Like how much of the movie is specifically?
So we spent a lot of time going back and forth. And my concern was that if I go too deep into my own story, if I go very specific to my story, I could maybe alienate some people who would think it's just about gay sex, just about gay men. And so we spent a lot of time thinking, how much of myself do I reveal? How do I go? And in the end, we did kind of go pretty deep into my story, but using that as just kind of a way to frame that everyone has to come out in some way, that
Right.
I had to come out about being gay. Maybe I had to come out of my attraction to men. But in a way, we all have that little thing that takes a little bravery and courage to come out about. And that's the only way you'll ever feel fully expressed, authentic, human. You'll be able to incorporate sexuality into your life in a way I think that's healthy, right? That we all have that taboo fantasy. We all have that thing that concerns us because no one talks about it. So I've been overjoyed to get feedback from straight men even who have told me, wow, like I got so much out of your film. Not only, my relationship with my parents, thinking through how maybe I've disconnected from them because we don't talk about sex, and or my love life, and to the idea of, there's a lot of things I don't even say to my partner about these things. So we'll see, but it seems like that though the movie is about my specific narrative, that other people are picking up, that they have similar kind of thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the way it sounds to me, it might be very specifically your journey, but it opens a doorway into just the total human experience and our sex negativity and our shame and our embarrassment and our lack of knowledge. And I mean, I don't think it's any different as a heterosexual woman. It's different and it's not different, right? So it sounds like the film will be relevant.
Yeah. The main message I think that I've come away with is that the only thing normal about us is that we're all different.
Right.
That if there are 7.8 billion people on this planet, there are 7.8 billion distinct sexualities, and we should maybe think about it in those terms. And that each one is normal.
Yeah. Yeah. So what were some of the ahas along the way?
I think definitely the idea of how much I don't think about sex in the way of like the beauty of connecting with another person. If you think about spirituality framed around kind of that sense of connection, of being more than yourself, being connected to a thing that's bigger than yourself. That's a big aha that I'm still thinking about when it comes to sex and who I choose to be sexual with. And also, I think, without giving too much away, the most surprising thing to come out of this movie is my relationship with my parents has been improved, more than I could have ever thought. We were all, I was out, like I said, they marched in gay pride parades, but there's still a lot of my life I kept hidden from them because we had never once, I've never once said the word erection in front of them. I never once said the word masturbation in front of them, and not to say that you should tell your parents every aspect of your sex life. Boundaries are important. But the idea of, even asking a question of like, what did your sex life change as you got into your 40s? Or, how do you two handle with different problems when it comes to intimacy? These things that I think parents are kind of in the best case scenario are the best people to go to because they know you so well. They have your best interests at heart. And we're having these conversations now that I never thought I could have and talking about things in a way that now it just feels like, I don't need to hide as much as myself, and I don't need to pretend, when we get on the phone now, it's not just what's the weather like where you are. It's now, how's your husband, how you're dealing with this, how, these, it just becomes more integrated into our relationship in a way that I didn't expect. And then how cool they are about all of it and how much good advice they actually have has just been wonderful.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that it might have changed the way they talk to each other. That not only were they not talking to you, but they may not have been as open with each other. I mean, because I work with couples all the time, and it's a common theme. I wonder if this whole exploration has opened up communication between the two of them.
I'm not sure. I'll ask them next time. I feel like I can ask them now. I feel comfortable to ask them, which is great. Yeah, and I hope the movie does that for people that often I think the most challenging part about communicating about sex is just that icebreaker moment. Once you break the ice, it becomes a lot easier. And the movie hopefully can become that, where you see the section about porn, you see the section about masturbation, you see the section about fantasies. It becomes, oh, remember that part of the movie? What did you think about that? And hopefully breaks the ice a little so we can all have the conversation with courage.
Yeah. Hey, we're taking a real quick break here in the middle of the podcast, and I want to share with you a free resource. If you are in a relationship where sexual desire has been an issue, where one of you wants more sex than the other, where one of you or both of you are struggling to feel desire for sex, this is the training for you. It's a free webinar that you can watch on demand. It's called How to Want Sex More, or Help Your Partner To, without feeling pressure or obligation. In it, I cover the 5 biggest mistakes that keep people stuck, blocked from their sexual desire, and it's going to give you ways to approach this differently, to start to create a sex life that's really fun and easy for both people. You can sign up at intimacywithease.com/masterclass. So are those the basic, maybe there's more sections than that? Like, what do you want to say about porn and about masturbation?
Yeah. So I think basically we kind of go through the arc of, how did I learn about sex? What are the things that I still am nervous about? And I think because no one was talking about gay sex, porn, and I think it's common for straight people too, but definitely for gay people, porn became the only depiction of men having sex that felt not tragic, that felt actually like, though it's distorted and it's a fantasy and it's not real life, it was the only place where I could see 2 men having sex and it was pleasurable. It seemed like fun and there was no judgment around it.
Yeah.
I could see depictions of what it actually looked like, the mechanics of how do you have anal sex. But like I was saying, porn leaves out so much of what you need to have good sex. Porn is not real life. It's a fantasy. It's entertainment. It's like watching a superhero movie. That's not real life, and neither is porn.
Right.
And so we kind of delve into that about should we be talking about porn in schools? Because if kids are watching it and they're curious and no one is talking to them about the basic mechanics of what sex actually looks like and how to have pleasurable sex, which is what really the only thing we all really care about, how to have pleasurable sex, then porn is going to fill that vacuum. And there are some bad, outcomes if that's the only place where you see that. And so we kind of dive into that. And then we actually go to Pornhub and we go through all their data around like, what are people actually searching for? And you quickly realize that the search terms show that we all kind of like a little bit of a, taboo is exciting. It's different, right? We watch movies about all sorts of taboo crimes and things like that. So of course our porn searches would be the same. and then just kind of going to the Catholic Church, going to different politicians, some conservative politicians who are trying to, enact some policies that maybe are anti-sex, seeing how we talk through these issues and who are the people like Planned Parenthood or who are realizing and going around these systems to at least make sure that as many people get the right information as possible.
Yeah. Besides watching your film, what do you recommend people do? I'm seeing, the term sexual literacy. Like how do we educate ourselves? We're generally not going to get this in our schools.
Yeah.
We can't control whether we're going to get it from our parents.
Yeah.
So where do people go?
It's tough. I think luckily with the internet, trust some trusted sources. Planned Parenthood is of course, I think probably the best, and you can get your basic questions answered. And I think now the medical part is much easier to understand in terms of, they're very matter of fact, nonchalant, non-judgmental information about oral sex, anal sex, just basic vaginal intercourse, all these things we have. But I think the biggest challenge, and it's really just taking those little tiny baby steps to be open and honest with the people you trust about kind of the fears, the questions, the confusions you have. And more importantly, probably, is if being someone who listens non-judgmentally as well. I think one of the skills that is still difficult for a lot of us is to hear something that maybe it's okay to have a bias or a disgust reaction. That's normal. But to understand, where is that coming from? Is it coming from like a healthy place that makes sense to you? Or is it coming from kind of your, imprinting from youth that maybe isn't from a good place? And being able to hold that judgment and listen non-judgmentally, I think opens things up so that we start to be a little more sexually illiterate and realize that our sexuality is something that we maybe is scary a little bit, but it's something you can never get rid of. So the best thing to do is to kind of lean into it and hear other people's perspectives and see different models for how people are sexual, so that you can be a little more okay with how you are sexually.
Yeah. So are you talking to everyone about sex more, not just your parents? Like, are you now at dinner with friends and going to be the one that brings up the topic? That's how I'm imagining.
I think my friends are probably sick of me talking about sex at this point. But yeah, I think, it's interesting in doing the film, and now that people are starting to see the film, being at different panels, being in different spaces in which people are all of a sudden feeling like they have the space to actually have needed conversations about assault, consent, all the way to, just, oh my gosh, I've had burned in my brain this fear from youth about masturbating to this type of porn, all different things. And I do think that, for better or worse, I've kind of, now I'm carving this path where people do feel like that I'm able to hold that with them. And it's something that I don't know, I'm still kind of processing it all, but it feels like people really need that permission, that they really need that permission. And so, yeah, hopefully I can continue doing that for people, and people can start to learn how to do it for others.
Yeah. Where is the film? How do people see this? When is it?
So our world premiere is just about to end, but basically we'll be in film festival streaming online, so you can watch from the comfort of your home. All year. So if you go to sexplanation.com, you can get tickets there. We'll be at the American Documentary Film Festival and the Cleveland Film Festival till the end of April. And we have some more coming up then. But the beauty of the film festivals now, at least, though it would be great to see it in a theater full of people, you can now see any of these movies wherever you are in the United States.
Okay. So as you're at different festivals through the year, people can buy tickets, watch it from their living room.
Exactly.
And then will there be access after that, do you imagine?
Yeah. So we're hoping, after the film festival run, we're kind of in talks now with people. And the idea is, hopefully, if there's a good response at the film festivals, people can start to see it on some sort of streaming network worldwide. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And where do you go with this? What's next for you? Are you going to, you're going to stop having sex, but like, are you gonna develop this further into something else, or are you going on?
I there's a lot of things. I mean, there are so many parts that we probably have 10 to 12 segments, interviews that we just couldn't fit in the film. Sex is such a broad topic.
Yeah. We
interviewed some trans, non-binary healthcare providers, and frankly, we just couldn't put it in because that could be a whole movie in itself. How do we talk about gender today?
Yeah.
How do we think about gender? There wasn't as much kind of queer kink stuff as I would have liked, because again, that requires a lot of nuance, I think, to get people to kind of understand. And frankly, there was the hardest cut that we had to make, but where I kind of do feel like I want to put a lot of my efforts in my next project is, how do you have these conversations not among people you love and trust, but among people who are actively against kind of these types of conversations. So we spent some time in Utah interviewing politicians, going to Planned Parenthood there. And there's also this group called Encircle. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're basically a gay queer youth center. And the idea is that they built their first center in Provo, Utah, across the street from the Mormon temple. And the idea is that gay kids can go there to just hang out. They can, and families, especially families. So their parents can come, and there's counseling, but there's music events. They can do their homework. There's cooking events. The idea is that this very, very amazing woman, Stephanie Larson, realized that teen suicide, especially of gay youth in Utah, has quadrupled, in the last couple of years. And basically, it's because these families aren't talking to each other. These kids feel like they're alone. The families aren't willing to talk to their neighbors about their gay kids. And in a weird, I shouldn't say weird, in an amazing way, because she created this center and the focus is only on love. So these gay kids have a safe space to be, but they can't say bad things about the Mormon church. They can't be anti-Mormon, but because they're positioned right across the Mormon church, the Mormon people see that this loving community, right? These kids are the people they grew up with. The parents are the people who they've known for decades. The kids go out and do very Mormon things. They go out and help, mow lawns, and they go out and do the things that a good Mormon does. And slowly, Mormon bishops have started to walk in, see what it's all about. They look and they say, oh, this is great. And it's forcing these conversations that before would be way too heated and shame-filled. And they're able to have these conversations and not only have them, but the Mormon bishops are able to listen and realize maybe the way I've been taught about this is wrong. So I'm wondering, who are the people doing this? How are they doing this? How are they having these conversations that fit with the cultural values of their community and start to actually change hearts and minds?
So does that mean there's another film 2, 3, 4 coming down the road?
We'll see. I'm pretty spent from this one, but I do think that there's a little bit more just in how do we have these types of conversations in a way that's productive, because it does feel like right now so many of the conversations we're having around this are destructive and just trench warfare. And I'm going to see if we can break out of that.
Yeah, cool. All right. So will you say the website one more time, or anything else you want to say about how people could reach you, or what else?
Yeah. It's just a sexplanation.com. It's basically a sex explanation, a sexplanation, but it's also kind of a sex plan for the nation. We kind of play around that word. So just go to sexplanation.com, a sexplanation on all the social handles, and you can find where to see the movie all year and any updates we have for you.
Great. I'll put the links in the show notes too, so it's simple for people.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.